this skein is even tied anywhere. And so what had happened was I'm just not loving drop shoulders on me. When I realized that it was going to be off center, I just knew I had to rip it back. So I had to redo the math on everything, but that's par for the course for me. Hi, I'm MsMakes, and this is what I've been making in the month of February. So February is a really short month, and I feel like it was even shorter for me because the last week of the month I had a super busy, intense week at work, so I really didn't get a lot of stuff done because I pretty much just went to sleep when I went home. But I still feel like I got a lot of stuff done, and I'm really proud of the progress that I made on my current projects. So I'm going to start with something I was working on last month, and at the end of January, I finished up the sleeves on my Jenny jacket, well, at least where it tells you to knit the sleeves to. I'm still thinking I might need to make them a little bit longer. I'm knitting this out of 2 strands of Biche's Bouche's La Petite Lamb's wool in the shade Candy, which is a beautiful multicolored fiber dye, held together with Fiber Spates Cumulus, which is an alpaca silk blend. So the sleeves are done, and I got started working on the body. This is where I'm at on the body, which may not look like much, but I am very proud of my progress, especially because I knit all the way through the body ribbing, got to the first smocking row, and realized I had set the ribbing up wrong, and I had to rip all the way out and start over again. So I have knitted a large portion of this twice, so I'm really proud with how far I've gotten. The smocking rows take me about 45 minutes to an hour to knit, so if I'm on a smocking row, it's pretty much all I do that day, so I am really proud of the progress that I've made. Now, I have changed this pattern, which has 1x1 ribbing at the bottom, to be 2x1 ribbing at the bottom, just so that it has a cleaner line that I prefer. And so what had happened was when I set that up, I looked at the pattern for the first setup row for the 2x2 rib to see if I started with a knit column or a purl column, because since it's a cardigan, you want to either start or end on the same column. The repeat is 4 plus 2 as opposed to just 4 for symmetry, so that you want either to end both on a knit column or end both on a purl column. So I looked at the setup row in the pattern to set up my 2x1 ribbing and didn't realize that it was on the wrong side. So where I set up to start with, I think I started with a knit column, I was supposed to start with a purl column. And so when I got to the first smocking row, I realized that I had an uneven number of knit columns and an even number of purl columns, and it should have been reversed. So that would have meant that my smocking would not be symmetrical, that on one side of the cardigan I would smock the first 2 knit columns together, and on the other side I would do the last 2 out of 3 knit columns, then I would have 1 knit column unsmocked. And because the smocking pattern is staggered, what it's supposed to look like is that on the inner edge, on one row you have the most innermost knit column smocked together, and then the next row there is 1 unsmocked column, but it's even, it's symmetrical, and how I had set it up, it was not going to be symmetrical. So I ripped it all out, which was very sad, and started over, but this is where I'm at now. I'm almost about halfway up to the bottom of the armhole where I meant to join the sleeves in, so I'm pretty proud of that progress. Another thing that I'm doing differently on this is, again, instead of the 1x1 ribbed button band, I am knitting on a folded button band. So I would prefer the look of a double knit button band, but I didn't really want to do the work of a double knit button band, so I'm doing it as a little panel of stockinette that I can then fold and sew down, and it will look like a double knit button band. And I'm doing this with like an extra 11 stitches or so, and the middle stitch I am slipping on every wrong side row, which really gives me a place where it wants to fold over, and a really nice edge. I also was able to cast this on with the rest of my tubular cast on, so it just like ends cleanly in the cast on at the bottom, which is really nice. And then when I'm doing the buttonholes, I have to remember to do basically 2 buttonholes, so that once I fold it and sew it down, they will act as 1 buttonhole. So I'm really happy with how that's looking, happy with how my cast on went this time. I had mentioned before that I felt like on the sleeves the cast on was flaring just a little bit, but that's going to come out in blocking, I think. I did do a 1x1 tubular cast on, then decreased into 2x1 ribbing. And so on this cast on edge for the body, I did the cast on with only 2 strands of yarn, with one of the lamb's wool and one of the cumulus, and then I added the second strand of lamb's wool in on my first actual row. So I think that totally ended all flaring issues. Really love that. Would love the ability to do more like half yarn cast-ons in the future, but it's not always possible unless you like unply your yarn. So it worked out in this case because I'm using so many strands of yarn to knit this, but it is what it is. So I'm really happy with the progress that I've made on this. I'm hoping that by the end of March I can get to the point where I'm joining the body and the sleeves. I think that's a really achievable goal. It would be nice to get a little bit further into the raglan decreases, but we shall see. I won't make any promises about that, but I am really excited about how this is turning out. My new cast on for the month is actually something I did talk about in my January video, which is that my friend and I did some indigo dyeing early in the month of February, and I put out a whole video about the indigo dyeing process. It was really, really fun, and we just loved it. We're definitely going to do it again. And I dyed some Knitting for Olive cotton merino, and I have been knitting up a Minto tee, and this is where I'm at with it. So really happy with my progress here. This is 100 grams of yarn in. I'm very happy with how much I've gotten past the sleeves, and it's on silicone tubing because at this point I'm going to block it. I have made quite a few changes to this pattern already. I'm knitting it at a significantly smaller gauge than is called for in the pattern, so I did some things to mess with the sizing and get it to the size that I wanted. I'm also converting it from being a drop shoulder to being a set-in sleeve. I'm just not loving drop shoulders on me, so when I saw the opportunity, I went for it. And so basically, it starts at the back with knitting the back flat and doing increases to create the shape of the back. And so I took basically the last column, cable column, off of the increases before I started knitting straight down. And then I added that column in at the very end, right before I was meant to stop to work on the front and then eventually cast on the underarm stitches. And so when I picked up the front shoulder pieces, I again picked up one column less because I had one column, well, 2 columns less on the back, but on each side I had 1 column less. Knit down, created the neckline, and then right before I was meant to join in the round, I added that last set of increases in to bring me up to the full number that I needed, and then cast on for the underarms. And I think that the shape is looking really good. You want to block it just to get like a really accurate peek of what my gauge is doing right now, so that I can calculate how many stitches I want to pick up for the sleeves. The sleeves on the original Minto tee are quite large, I think especially because of that drop shoulder, and so I'm just going to want to have a completely different number so that it fits me closer, because this whole garment is going to fit me with a lot less ease than is called for in the original pattern. Also, the armholes are looking quite deep right now, but I'm not too worried about that because since it is a cable knit, I do intend to stretch it quite a bit in blocking, and when it stretches horizontally, it will shrink vertically, so I think that this is going to fit pretty good after it's been blocked. But I'm just going to do a mid-project block right now and take an accurate gauge, try it on, and make sure that the armholes are fitting me how I want them to, and then I will start doing the math for how to do the sleeves as a set-in sleeve instead of as a drop shoulder sleeve. So I am going to do pick it up and just work short rows in order to shape the sleeve, and I need to do some math on it because typically you would short row by going 1 stitch past your previous short row to work the sleeves. That's kind of like the standard for when you're working a drop shoulder sleeve, but it would really work out better for the stitch pattern if I did every 2 stitches on that short row instead of every 1 stitch. That will give me less short rows overall. So I'm just going to kind of look at it and do some math and see if that would work out. I'm also not opposed to just knitting 1 set of short rows up, trying it on and saying, is this looking weird? Is it pulling in any way? I need to go back and redo it. But the plan is that after I block this, the next thing I'll work on is the sleeves. I'll pick up and do the short rows for 1 sleeve and then do them for the second sleeve. And then I will put both sleeves on the same needle and work them all the way down 2 at a time. And then once I'm finished with the sleeves, I'll go back to working on the body. But I'm really happy with how much body that I've gotten under the arm that's a really great length for being able to try it on as I go. I'll probably also wind up picking up and knitting the collar before I finish the sleeves, just so that I make sure I get a good length on those sleeves. I'm thinking that another change that I will make is to do 2x2 ribbing on this instead of 1x1 ribbing, because with the stitch pattern repeat being 8 stitches and the cables being made up of 2 stitches crossing, I just think the 2x2 will look nicer and blend a little bit in more with the overall cable pattern. So that's where I'm at on the Minto tee. I've made really great progress. I'm really happy with the yarn and the color. I'm so proud that I dyed this with indigo, and so I'm really excited to see how this one turns out, and I'm very happy with the progress that I made. I've really been spending the month focusing on those 2 knitting projects. I did work on one other small project, which I'm not quite finished with, but I will be finished with shortly. It's just a little hat. Our friends are expecting a baby in actually just a couple days. When they had their first baby, the nursery theme was sheep, and I knit this pattern, which is from MsMakes. It's a little sheep hat. I knit that for them, and they used it in their newborn photos, which was so touching to use my gift in that way. And I found out that they're going with a bunny theme for the new nursery, so I said, well, I have to knit you another hat and just make the ears longer and make it into a bunny hat. So I'm not quite done with it. I've got one of the ears done, one of the backs of the ears done. I have to knit the front pink piece, and then I will have the second ear to go. But this is something that I think I can finish today. It is so quick to do a little baby knit like this. So I've just got to put it all together and block it, and it'll be a little bunny hat. And I'll try to remember to take a picture before I mail it off this week, so that I can put the finished one up. That's just a little tiny something I've been working on. I am knitting this in Knit Picks Memento, which is 100% cable plied cotton. It's very soft. I'm really quite liking it. It is a DK weight, and I'm holding it together to try to hit the Aran weight that the pattern called for. Of course, my gauge was still not quite right with that. I wound up with like a 17 stitch gauge when they called for 19, so I had to redo the math on everything, but that's par for the course for me. Since I had to do the Knit Picks order to order the yarn for this, I did also go ahead and order the bubbly boucle that I was talking about in my January video. So the boucle yarn, and also one skein of the gloss, which just comes, I don't know if this skein is even tied anywhere, but this is gloss, which is their merino silk fingering weight yarn, and the bubbly boucle, which they call a sport weight, and it is 82% alpaca, 13% wool, and 5% nylon. So I'm planning to use this to knit an Artemisia sweater by Emma Mayer, and I'm going to hold the boucle together with some colorful mohair from Through the Wardrobe Yarn Company. And then since the pattern calls for a plain yarn for the cuff and the collars, that's what I have gone with the Knit Picks gloss for. So these are both in the undyed colorways, and I'm not sure when I'm going to cast that on. I'm probably going to wait till about halfway through the month of March to cast that on, really trying to focus on the Jenny jacket and the Minto tee and make great progress on those. So it'll probably be a little later in the month that I cast this on, but since I was doing a Knit Picks order anyways to get the yarn for the baby hat, I did go ahead and just order these to combine my shipping. So the one other thing that I have been working on making this month is actually sewing this little Elmo doll that currently only has one eye for my toddler, who has never seen Sesame Street but is still obsessed with Elmo thanks to just one Elmo book. Now, while I don't get rid of any soft toys that people give us, I do just prefer, if I can, to choose things made out of natural fibers. We do have a few stuffed animals and things that are made out of cotton and wool, and so that was why I decided to try my hand at making my own stuffy, because it is hard to find all natural fiber soft toys, especially for branded characters like Elmo. So I'm actually making this out of towels, and I'm very much liking it. I think it has turned out very nice and very cute. I got a clearance set of red towels, and then just like a single orange washcloth, and then the eye is really just some cotton jersey that I had in my stash, or you could use an old t-shirt. And I'm going to embroider the people on just with some embroidery thread. And then I have stuffed it with some wool roving that I have, and I'm really happy with how this is coming out. Because the pieces are so small, I am sewing it entirely by hand, really because I just didn't want to mess with it being fiddly on my sewing machine, and that way I can sit on the couch and do it when I'm tired after work instead of having to go up to my sewing room, which currently, because it's winter, is freezing. It's like the coldest room in the house. So yeah, that's just a little something I've been working on. I will be finished with it soon. I'm just sewing the eyes on, and then I'll have to embroider them, and I'll be all done. But I'm very happy with how this experiment has come out. I really just did it to see, can I make a soft toy out of towels? How will that turn out? Will my toddler like it? So that is still yet to be seen, but I'm very happy with how this is coming out, and it definitely has given me a lot of confidence for making more soft toys out of towels or other fuzzy natural fiber fabrics in the future. I do also want to try my hand at knitting some. Of course, I've seen like the beautiful Claire Garland knitting patterns. So that's on my list as well. I would just need to get a little kind of stash going of the correct colors and types of yarn for that. So I thought it was a little bit easier to jump in with some sewing and with some towels I was very easily able to purchase from the store. That's really everything I've been working on this month. Again, it was such a short month, but I'm so happy with the progress that I'm making. I'm really excited, especially for my Minto tea going into spring. This weekend we had one day of beautiful warm weather, and I was able to sit out in the hammock a little bit and work on this. It's going to be so lightweight, and it's going to be a really great spring piece, or something even honestly that I'll wear in the summer inside my cold office. So I'm really excited about this one. Also excited about the Jenny jacket and how it's turning out, especially all of the hard work that I have put into it, because I've put a lot of extra work into it that's not going to wind up being shown thanks to ripping back and knitting it again, but I'm just really invested in that turning out super good. So when I realized that it was going to be off center, I just knew I had to rip it back, however sad that was. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to keep trying to do these little monthly knitting updates as I am able to. You can subscribe to me here or follow me on Instagram at MsMakes. I'm also MsMakes on Ravelry, and I'm going to link my Ravelry projects that I've talked about in the description down below. Thank you for joining me, and hope to see you again soon.